Political panel now. Republican strategist John Thomas and News Nation political contributor Kurt Bardella. Welcome both. It's good to see you. John, why don't we start with you tonight? President Trump asked yesterday about any potential meeting between President Zelensky and Putin. This is what he had to say.
We're going to see if Putin and Zelensky will be working together. You know, that's like oil and vinegar a little bit. They don't get along too well. For obvious reasons, but we'll see. And then we'll see whether or not I would have to be there. I'd rather not.
He says he'd rather not attend such a meeting, but should the U.S. be at the table for any talks going forward until a deal is reached?
I think Trump wants to see if the two men are able to come to a reasonable understanding, and then that allows Trump to come in as the king mediator to, weigh in based upon what the two men are able to come together. I get it. Trump wants to be the final deal maker. That's how he sees himself here. We'll see if that works. I mean, I don't know. This is a very delicate situation. Obviously, we know that President Trump wants to see a resolution here. And if that's how he wants to see this first round go, well, let's give that a try.
So, Kurt, Trump, again, expressing his frustration with Putin while trying to make progress. Is there anything that Trump or the U.S. should be doing that it hasn't been doing so far in order to make this deal?
Well, I think one of the things we saw after the round of meetings that we saw last week was Republicans in the Senate, particularly Senate Majority Leader John Thune, kind of sent the signal that if need be, they were ready to authorize additional economic sanctions against Russia and Vladimir Putin. I think there are those to the president's party who think that that might be necessary to ramp up the pressure on Putin to come to the negotiating table. Maybe they're holding that back to see if anything can come of a Putin-Zelensky meeting, if that happens at all. I think the president is pretty aware that in all likelihood, even if the two meet, they're not going to come away with a resolution. He's holding back so that he can potentially come in and fix it later. Or at the very least, if it blows up without him being there, he can say they weren't ready for peace yet. And so he's keeping his powder dry.
Okay, so John, I want to switch to another topic in D.C. President Trump says it's possible he's going to declare a national emergency in order to keep the federal law enforcement takeover going there. Is that a public safety move or simply an overreach of federal power?
Well, I mean, I think President Trump believes it's public safety. I can tell you, I was in D.C. this week, and the feeling is palpable that the town just feels more safe. It does. So the only thing that has changed recently in D.C. public safety has been that the federal government has gotten involved. So I think President Trump sees that as a potential solution for some of these crime-infested big cities. Look, there certainly is going to be pushback from some of the local mayors. But what I saw in D.C. firsthand is that people walking around with their shoulders dipped a little lower because they're just happy that doesn't feel like you're going to get mugged quite as frequently as you might have a couple weeks ago.
Interesting. So, Kurt, what is your response there? And, Trump reportedly also eyeing Chicago now and New York next. We do hear some on the left calling this a political stunt, calling it a threat to democratic governance or simply a distraction. What is your analysis on the potential national emergency to extend this and then it then spreading to other cities?
I'm old enough to remember that when Republicans believed that the expansion of executive power at the expense of local and state sovereignty was a bad thing. That's what true conservatism used to mean. I think that if you're okay with Donald Trump doing this in other places, in other states and other municipalities, then you better be okay with a Democrat doing the same thing, using emergency powers to deploy the United States military, however the commander-in-chief sees fit. It's a slippery slope. Where does it end? It starts with we're trying to deal with crime and violence. Does it end with perhaps deploying the National Guard to become election monitors in 2026 or 2028? This is a very slippery slope. And there's a reason why for so long we've heard Republicans talk about wanting to have less executive power, less executive overreach, less centralized executive branch. And they're kind of eroding all of that now. And at some point, the shoe will be on the other foot. And when that time comes, I don't want to hear from Republicans when they're mad that Democrats are doing the same thing.
John, what's your response?
Well, look, if there is a future Democratic administration, Kurt, that wants to send in public safety into my city to make my streets safer, if that's overreach, feel free to overreach in my town. That's one thing I'd welcome any Democrat or Republican to do in my town.
I do want to move to a story that the administration can't seem to shake. The DOJ releasing the audio, the transcript of their interview with the former Jeffrey Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell. Kurt, what struck you the most in what she said or what she didn't say?
It really sounded like someone who's auditioning to get a pardon. You could not have been more effusive of President Trump. I think she was very mindful that it was going to be recorded and probably put out public consumption. And so the message is really clear right now. It would not shock me if at some point she doesn't get what she thinks she wants or needs from Donald Trump or the Justice Department. If there's a turn there, this is a story that we've seen a lot of twists and turns, a lot of interesting, political bedfellows, no pun intended there. I think that there's going to be another act to come of drama with Maxwell. Right now, she's playing nice. Let's see if she gets anything in return.
So, John, what is your take here? I mean, despite their efforts, these transcripts will not quiet the voices on either side asking for full transparency. Can Maxwell say anything to calm that crowd? Can she even be trusted at this point?
I think there's really two takeaways I had from the transcripts. One is that Ghislaine is not a credible witness. So you got to take what she says with a grain of salt. So that's one thing. And the other is what we didn't see. I'm not sure she can be believed, but what we didn't see is a smoking gun that the Democrats allege that President Trump, was thick as thieves with Epstein. That didn't come out either. So I don't know this move really assuages any concerns on either side. She doesn't have credibility, but I don't think the Democrats got what they wanted, and this isn't the credible testimony that Republicans can use to end the controversy.
John Thomas, Kurt Bardella, appreciate you both. Thank you.
Have a great rest of your weekend.
In an escalation